What's up, bros? Welcome to the Men of Mind podcast. I'm Omar Bravo, and this is the podcast all about badass knack bros and their journeys through life. From the bad beats and the lessons learned to the mountaintop successes and advice they'd give their younger selves, this is your chance to get to know these bros better. In this episode, I talk with Arturo Olivas, Zeta Chapter at Alpha Class number 18 from UC Santa Barbara. Orale. What's up, bro?
How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. How are you?
I'm great.
It looks like you're busy, man. You're having to take calls from the car.
And that's the way my life is, bro. That's why I was telling you. I have my son's soccer schedule came up, and so I just dropped him off, and I have about a good hour and a half, 2 hours in the car waiting for him.
So long as you're at the soccer field and not sitting in your driveway because you got kicked out of the house, then we're good.
Yeah, you're right. So if this is acceptable for you in this for your video content, I'm okay. If not, we can do it for another time when I'm in the office and give you
No, bro, this is fantastic, man. When it comes down to it, bros are busy. It's great. Not that they're busy, but that they're doing what they got to do, man. They're holding it down, and we catch up wherever we can catch up. And I think it's great, man. I think it's great. So I appreciate you taking the time, making the time. Let's get into it, bro. Maybe you've heard an episode or two, but I start all these the exact same way. Since it's been so long that since I've caught up with folks, and that is single and ready to mingle, married with kids, or somewhere in between.
Oh, I'm married with kids, bro. So 2005, we got married. It was my wife and I met in college, and I was a sophomore, and she was a freshman, and we connected. She actually ended up becoming a Lambda, so she was part of the sorority, the only sorority at the time that was there, because in Santa Barbara it was just NACs and Lambdas. So we connected, and a lot of my girlfriends were Lambdas. We had a good connection of bros, and then I had connected with them, and she eventually got in there, and then we got married, and now we have 2 kids. One that's a boy that's 11, Alejandro, who's here at the soccer practice today, and then my daughter who's 13, about to start high school. So exciting times.
That's a heck of a run. So what year did you graduate?
I graduated UC Santa Barbara in 1997.
Okay, so you guys have been together 20 and a couple?
Together, yeah. Married in 05, so would that be? That'd be about, and then 20, so 10, 15, 17. About, yeah. It's been a good run, It's been a good run. We
that's a fantastic run, man. I mean, most of there's lots of people that can't make that claim, brother. That's fantastic. Good for you. And then 2 kids, right on, man. 13 and 11. That's yep. Right. Have they? Is that the age, or have they hit that age where it's not as cool to hang out with mom and dad anymore? Are they on their own?
The daughter's gotten there a little bit. The son is still a little bit of a baby. Still got a little baby in him, which is good. I still have a little time with him. My daughter's become a little bit more independent, but it's gradually getting to that point where they're veering off to be there on their own.
Yeah, you're closer to being an empty nester than you are to having newborns. That's for sure, right?
Yeah. Now I remember listening into some of the videos. What do you have? You have 4? Is it 4? 5. That's right. I was like, what the heck? 4 is one thing. 5 is a whole nother level, man.
The way
That's impressive. That's how they do it, aren't you in Utah?
Yeah, right. We got to keep up with the Mormons, man. I got to bring the Mexican Catholics got to represent out here.
All right. That's
No, but
cool.
when it comes down to it, our understanding always was that your first kid, you're a double team. 2 kids, man to man. 3 and beyond, you're just playing a zone, so it doesn't really matter. Like
That's hilarious. I'm just playing a zone,
you're
just
just
trying to keep up.
well, I mean, after there's only so many hours in the day, there's only so much bandwidth, so it's like, hey, you guys get it all. Like there, you just give
What
your
are their
all the
ages?
time.
What are their
Uh,
ages?
we're at 10, 8, 6, 4, and 1, 2, going on 2.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so stair step
Yeah.
all the way down every 2 years, pretty close.
That's cool. That's cool.
It's a blast, bro. It's a blast. I mean, it's all I do. I go to work and then I roll with kids. I don't play golf or go to the bar or hang with like that's it.
Yeah.
That's all there is. It's
So I'm just thinking about it because, like, like right now, my son plays competitive soccer, and it's a full-time job,
mhm.
and my daughter plays sports as well, and she's pretty active. She's about to do stuff, and so we're split, right? Like it's just like, my wife takes her, or I take him, or we do vice versa, or whatever. I couldn't imagine more than that. Like I don't know what I would do. Like how in the world would I handle it if they were like all kind of like active and involved and doing stuff? What do you do? So it's like,
Yeah, I think it's just a completely different setup where we talk about it a lot going through COVID and the likes, where we have friends who had only children, and they were suffering through the lack of socialization, whereas our
mhm.
kids, I think they actually flourished even more because they were just locked in together. And so that bond, all 5 of them, it's like we throw them in the backyard and tell them to figure it out, and they have enough people to have a squad, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so there really is that bond all the way through. And I'm the youngest of 9, and I feel like we all had the same
Oh.
thing. So
Okay. Okay. So you
so
have a little bit of experience. You just not like this
yeah.
is like you're not just like, oh, I'm just gonna go make it happen. You have experience coming from a big family.
Yeah. I'm from a big family. My wife's an only child.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I have I
Interesting.
have
I'm an only child.
Is that right? There
Yeah.
you go.
I'm an only child. So it's pretty interesting. You go from someone who has tons of siblings and someone that doesn't, and to be able to have that dynamic to work together and understand like the intricacies of personalities between the two, and then to manage that for kids and develop that is pretty awesome for you.
Talk to me. So that's really interesting. Every time I meet a bro that's an only child, number one, it's pretty rare. But number two, were you really close with your cousins, or where did you learn the brotherhood before you learned the brotherhood?
It's a good question. I had I was an only child, a very unique story in terms of how that happened. My mom, so my mom and my dad were married, and then at 19, when she was 19, she went into a job interview at a like a warehouse place or something, and when she went into the interview, the owner of the company, who was conducting the interview, was just him and her, and then he decided he was going to try to take advantage of her, and he pulled out a gun and was like holding her like, okay, this is what you're going to do. And so my mom started kind of fighting with them and negotiating with them, and then the gun went off and shot her in the neck, and she became paralyzed from the neck down. And really, I think what was really powerful about that time for her was, as bad as the situation was, she was able to convince him to take her to the hospital and drop her off so that she could survive, because she was thinking about me. She was like, oh, my son and I. She's just like this whole process. So he ended up doing that. But then after that, because of, all the things that go along with becoming paralyzed and, the difficulties and challenges, I think, plus everything else, I think my mom and dad separated. And so she ended up, raising me. But that I was one at the time. And so she raised me as a quadriplegic at that time. And so what ended up happening is I had a lot of, I think I had a lot of family support around me of different people. And so some of my uncles and cousins, they stepped up, and I formed some pretty good bonds with some of my cousins and the family that we had, because we had a pretty big family as well, not me per se, but like the extended family. And so our family events and things like that, we were always together. So I built kind of a connection with people. And then growing up, I think early I had a lot of good friends that were like my best friends in school, like from elementary, even to now. And so we were really tight. So I think I really built that sort of camaraderie and that brotherhood concept before brotherhood came to play in the fraternity and all that. So I think that is kind of where I can if you're thinking about that question, that's kind of where it takes me back to.
That's a wild story, bro. That's
I know.
I've never heard that
I
story
know.
before.
Yeah, she's my mom's a pretty amazing person, obviously, to survive that. And you think about it, I mean, people don't understand it, and it's very normal to me. So it's not like awkward in any way, and like I didn't know anything different, So my mom has always been in a wheelchair. My mom has always not been able to really, pretty much from the neck down, not been able to move. But she's always been very like ambitious, always trying to do better and trying to make opportunities for herself and me, and never giving up, and she's always been working. She's never stopped working. She's always constantly doing stuff. So she has a lot behind her. And so I think, she's always been obviously a very powerful person in my life, and a big inspiration. But because of her and, connecting me with all the different people that were around, and the friends that she had, and the relationships that all different, I think it opened up so many different opportunities that I may not have had otherwise, had I been in a normal experience with mom, dad, growing up where we were, and kind of who knows where I would have ended up being. I mean, I am the first to graduate from college or go to college. And, I think just the exposure, not necessarily from our family, but from like all the surroundings around us, which doors would have just opened because of, the situation. So it's always how, I think I always look at it like, and this is big for her too. She's always, I think sort of taught me that, you always kind of have to find the silver lining in the opportunities that are out there, and the situations that you're in. And, I attribute a lot of who I am today because of that experience, because of what happened there.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Where were your parents from? Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Santa Barbara, or what?
No, so I grew up in the LA area. So LA, outside of, so LA is huge. And we grew up in the San Fernando Valley, which is like you can basically say it's like the northwest part of Los Angeles. So I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in a city called Granada Hills. And pretty much, like when I was like 5, my mom bought a house there. And we lived, she's still in the same house. We grew up there. I went to school, elementary, middle school, high school, there. And then I ended up at Santa Barbara after applying for, college and seeing a few different options. But, I grew up there. My mom and her family, so my mom was born in Colombia, and so she was born in Colombia, and she came over when she was like, I think about 9 or 10 or so. And she had a couple of siblings with her, and her parents. And at the time they came, and a lot of our family kind of migrated to that same area in the San Fernando Valley, and slowly kind of all made their way from Colombia there from my mom's side. My dad's side is Mexican, and so that's kind of one of the interesting things about me as well is, I didn't really know my dad's side at all, really, until I didn't really know my dad's side except for like the siblings and the couple cousins that I connected with, but my whole world was around on my mom's side, right, and everything that we did. So I had a little bit of a feel for my dad's side just because of the uncles that were around and some of my aunts that were around, but I didn't spend a whole lot of time with them, so I didn't really get to know my Mexican side, really, to be honest, until I got to college. It was really weird. Like, I didn't eat Mexican food. I didn't eat anything. I didn't like, my whole world was not from Mexico at all. It was all Colombian. So I grew up completely like eating Colombian food. My family speaking Spanish, but in a Colombian dialect, the way they spoke. Visiting Colombia, going there, seeing family, all of that. And then that was one of the biggest, like, whoa, when I went to Santa Barbara and you kind of start connecting with your culture in different ways and understanding. And I'm like, oh, wow. And then I started meeting other people that were more Mexican or not Colombian. And then, started learning that. So I was like, okay, now I'm going to start kind of learning more about my dad's side. And so I got to learn and appreciate more of the Mexican side, which I'm glad I have, because it's one of my favorite foods. And a lot of the culture is super rich, and so it's a big part of me now. But it took a long time for me to learn that.
You mentioned that you were the first one to go to college. What, coming from the San Fernando Valley, what was the motivation, or who did you see that went to college that motivated you, or even let you know that it was possible?
Very good question. It's weird. So my mom has two really good friends that are still her like best friends to this day. And one of them was where they both were essentially teachers of her in high school. It's kind of weird. And one of them ended up being one of her physical therapists when she first got injured. And they just stayed friends for a very long time. And she was also a single woman with an only child. And so her and I became very close, her child and her, which essentially became like my god sister. And we grew up together. And then the other friend, so her name was Raina, and her other friend is named Vicky. And they were both, teachers at high schools, and one, Vicky Braun, was a college counselor at the high school at Canoga Park High School in the San Fernando Valley. And so when I kind of got into the school and getting into like thinking about what I'm going to do, it was just always like ingrained that was what's going to happen. You have to go to college, and she would always be there to like support me and like, okay, this is what you want to do, and expose me to the different universities that were around. And we went to go visit stuff and talk about it. So now the seed was planted, and I think from there I was just like, okay, that's what I have to do. I have to go to school. And I had some other people around me that were also kind of in my life phase, and they inspired me, and I think like in a professional way, to see like different professions that were out there that were very different than what was around us normally. Like one of our good friends, he was a really big stockbroker, And so I saw like this big business and like what they were doing. I was like, wow, that's awesome. Or another person who was an attorney, and I was like, wow, they're wearing suits and really looking nice. And then you start seeing TV and you're watching different shows and you're like inspired and like, oh, I want to be like them, you know, a different thing. So I was like, okay. So the inspiration built from there. And I think overall, eventually kind of just, it was a normal progression for me to go to college in some way. And I just kind of expected that was going to happen.
What made you choose Santa Barbara? There's a whole bunch of colleges in LA, right?
Yeah. So when I applied to school, so at that time when I started realizing I'm going to go to school, and then I started doing some research, and I said, okay, well, what are the different options? And I was a big, I still am a big USC football fan. So, and we would go to games. I'm like, oh yeah, I got to apply to USC. So that was one school I applied to. And then I had known somebody that went to school at the University of Arizona, and I was like, oh, that school looks cool. Never visited, but I said, okay, I'm going to apply there. And then I threw in a couple of UCs, and then I added Santa Barbara, not knowing, you know, what exactly it was, but just kind of apply there. Got accepted to USC, got accepted to University of Arizona, a couple other schools in Santa Barbara, and the first school, they're like, oh, you got accepted to Santa Barbara? Great, fantastic. Let's go visit. And have you ever been to Santa Barbara?
Yeah.
Okay. So from LA, if you come in from LA, you know, you drive in and then slowly you start making it close to the coast. And then you're riding the 101 along the coast. And you're like, okay, this is pretty nice, man. You know, and then the 101, there's a freeway that I think it's the 126. And it's the small freeway that goes from the 101 into Isla Vista, into the campus, and through kind of Goleta, which is the town outside. And I swear, I'll never forget. I remember driving up that 126, and I'm like, what the heck? This is a school? I'm like, this is where I could go to school? And I'm like looking up, and then I got to campus, and they were walking me through, and they said, these are the dorms, and this could be your room right here, and it's overlooking the water. And I'm like, sign me up. I don't need to go anywhere else. I don't need to do anything else. This is where I need to be. And that was it. And luckily I got accepted, and I got placed in the dorm, and literally my room, my freshman year, was overlooking the water at that exact same spot that I was coming up. And I'm like, man, this is fan-freaking-tastic. So beautiful. So then I fell in love, obviously, with Santa Barbara. And, you know, where I grew up in Granada Hills in the San Fernando Valley, it's a very, very hot place. You know, triple digits, summertime, year round. I mean, fall through summer, super hot. And I never ever even thought about the heat growing up there. Not one time. Go to Santa Barbara, 70 degrees regularly. Gets a little chilly in the winter. You know, get a little winter feel. So I spent the whole year, my first year in Santa Barbara, and I made the mistake of deciding I was going to go home for the summer that first year. So I go home back to the valley that first summer, and I am like dying. I'm like, how the hell do people live here? It is so hot. I had already gotten used to the beach feel and the 7 degrees year round. And I couldn't even believe it. I don't even believe it now. But when in our house, we didn't even have air conditioning, like central air. We had a swamp cooler in our house. I never even thought about it, right? And I'm like, I'm sitting in there, I remember in the summertime, and I'm just laying on the couch watching TV. I was probably just in my chonies. I had like a spritz bottle. I'm spraying myself, trying to get cool all day long. I'm like, this is miserable. How do you guys do this? And then I was like, after that, I was like, Mom, I'm sorry. I'm never coming back home again. I'm staying in Santa Barbara. And then, of course, like, I don't know, for few years later, she decided to put air conditioning in the house. I'm like, oh my gosh. But yeah, once I got to Santa Barbara and I was there and got used to like just being there was no turning back. So went from Santa Barbara there. And actually where I moved to now and where I'm at now from when I graduated is the closest it gets to being in Santa Barbara without being in Santa Barbara in LA. It's on the beach, in the beach area. It's called, the South Bay area. There's a bunch of little towns, same exact feel, like, same weather concept, sort of beach concept. So I've always really been connected after being in Santa Barbara and as close to the water as I was, and just always felt like a kinship with the ocean and trying to be as close to it as possible.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And I fully understand. In undergrad, coming from Santa Clara, we did plenty of road trips, and there was there's a big disparity from Santa Clara to, say, Stanislaus or Santa Clara. And I always felt like Santa Barbara and San Diego were the two closest to Santa Clara. So I fully understand it, man. Santa Barbara was a beautiful, beautiful place, beautiful campus. Like, I get it for sure.
So you made some road trips out to Santa Barbara, huh?
Yeah. I think one spring break we were running down to LA, and so we swung by Santa Barbara and picked up some of the bros, and
nice.
and finished out. So yeah, it was cool for sure.
Yeah, that was, I did so many trips up to Santa Clara and so many trips up to San Jose on a regular. I think that's probably how we kind of got connected here in some ways. My closest, some of my closest connections I would go from Santa Clara, and we bonded like immediately from day one. And there was so many I don't know, there's so many similarities between what we were going through at the time, and we had a really similar mindset. I think at the time too, when I was pledging and I first connected with Santa Clara, we were the only UC, and Santa Clara was also the only non-state school. So we were connected in that way because we were the only non-state schools at the time of the fraternity. So we built a bond there, and man, we did tons of road trips up there. The boys and all those guys came down on lots. So it was always
what
really
year
special.
Did you cross?
I crossed in '93.
Okay, so you were online with Santa Clara Founding Fathers.
Yeah. So they were. Yeah. So I was an alpha at the time. Our founders had just crossed, and Santa Clara was getting started, and they were in that same time frame. Yeah, so we connected. My class, the alphas, there was 6 of us, and we connected with the founders. Our first sort of major road trip was a NAC Fest. I'll say I'll think back. I can see it in my head, but I'm trying to remember where it was exactly. I don't know if it was at San Jose.
It's only been 29 years, bro. This should be like top of mind, man. 29 years.
I know. Most of it's kind of sad. I can't, but I can totally envision it. But anyways, I mean, I remember so that was the first time we connected. We actually stayed at I forget which of the founders, Sean's, like a bunch of them stayed at a house in Santa Clara, and we were there. We had to stay there with them. So that's when we first bonded.
When you first got to Santa Barbara, what got you interested in NAC, right? It was it was just the founders. So it was, how many founders were there at Santa Barbara?
So the dynamic at Santa Barbara was really interesting at that time. When I came in, I was a freshman, and I knew I wanted to get involved in school and be active in whatever I could be active in, right? And so I dabbled a little bit and trying to feel out what's out there, the different organizations, and I started to realize, because when we came in as freshmen, one of the first things that they did, they had a sort of like a summer transitional program for incoming freshmen. It was called STEP, and it was bringing in the kids, and giving them like 2 weeks on campus before school, and kind of putting them in the dorms and giving them a feel of way of life. But it was mostly all the students of color, essentially, and so we got to learn the resources that were out there, and they told you about the Black resources and the Latino resources and the Asian resources, and then you mixed in together, and so a lot of friendships, and you kind of realize you kind of have to, in a way, find, if you have those resources there and that community is there, and if you get involved in that community, it can be very resourceful for you. And that's kind of what I felt that I needed to, and like that was one of the things that was interesting for me from transitioning from where I grew up to going to school, was I didn't have my culture was my family. My culture was my being Colombian. I mean, that was normal to me. I didn't think of anything else. And so I wasn't just hanging out with Latinos. I wasn't just hanging out with, my elementary, my middle school, my high school. I had friends of all races and all colors and all people. So to me, people were people. I never really distinguished between one side or the other. When I went to Santa Barbara, I felt like, oh, I have to go down a certain path. I felt like I was like, okay, they're kind of pushing me down this path, but I was like, okay, well, this is a good opportunity for me to learn, because that's what I told you. I was starting to learn, like, I have another side of my culture that I don't know anything about, and this is an opportunity for me to learn. So if I sort of gravitate into that world and use the resources there. And so the majority of the students of Latino students that were incoming were predominantly Mexican background, some type of Mexican American or background. And so, it was weird. It was sort of odd for them that they were meeting someone that was not Mexican, it was Colombian, or, something that was different from them. But so it was a learning opportunity for me. So anyways, I started using the resources and meeting different people and building relationships. And so my first sort of connection was, there was a big brother, little brother, big sister, little brother type of program that they had through the Latino resources. And in Santa Barbara, the main resource was called El Congreso, and that was the hub for all the Latino resources that were there. And the only organizations that they had and opportunities they had were through El Congreso. And El Congreso was a politically motivated organization, and then they had a lot of sort of sub organizations underneath it to kind of build off of their community. And at that time when we came in, NAC and Lambda had just started, and it was this big, huge drama of transition for them, because they were the alternative to El Congreso. And because they were the alternative, they got a lot of heat and a lot of like, oh, all the same sort of, you guys are selling out, and you guys aren't part of our community, and why are you doing the Greek thing, and da 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 da. And I didn't know anything about any of that, but I met through one of their programs, which was a big sister, little brother program, and I got connected with somebody, and that was my big sister at the time, and so she happened to be a Lambda. And so I connected with her, and we just started, like, she was like, she took care of me. She was like making sure that I was, anything I needed, she was always there for me and always really resourceful. And then I started to meet her friends, and she was very involved with like the Black community as well. So I started meeting a lot of, the fraternities and sororities on that side, and even some of the other organizations. And then I got connected with she ended up connecting me. She's like, these guys just started the fraternity and they're doing something, and I want to introduce you to these guys because it might be something you should look into. And that's how I ended up connecting with some of the guys early, before they were even starting to start their first class. So then I started hanging out with them, and we would do some stuff together, and all of us as a group. So that was my first, and then I started learning the background and the history and what was going on. And I'm like, oh yeah, I think that is my path, because I've never been super political on that side when I came in. So I didn't really have a huge connection to that side. And they all kind of, at the time, I felt like I was, kind of the alternative to the mainstream for them in those groups, because they were very much about a lot of the political struggles that they were having in school, and that was the main inspiration. But I didn't gravitate to that. I didn't have that same sort of connection. So when I saw something that was alternative, and I felt like, oh wow, I can do something from scratch and kind of help build and be something new. I was like, wow, that's what I was inspired by at the time. I only knew a couple of the founders, and I was pretty close to them, and they were very inspirational because they had a lot of the same ideas. I mean, a lot of them were very much the same background, but they were like, we want a different path. We want a different opportunities, and we want to see that there's, something for us. And we felt like this is an opportunity. And I was inspired by that. So at that time, the timing of it was just perfect. And then, when I went to the first couple informational meetings, I met a lot of guys that were either my class or younger that were kind of in the same boat. They're like, I'm not really feeling that side. I'm kind of looking for a path, but I'm connected with my culture, and I want to kind of build off of that. And, that's where it started.
There's a couple interesting pieces. There was a lot of interesting pieces there, but I want to touch on just a couple. You said that, you heard about the history, and I think it's interesting, a bit comical, because at that time it seemed like history, and at the same time now it was what, like 4 years, 5 years worth of history that you were learning about. And so and then you talked about essentially what I heard was that, hey, there was this entrepreneurial spirit that you wanted to pave a new path, create that alternative. And so I think that those two actually go hand in hand, where hey, look, this history, it's a good history, but it's a nice short history, and I can come put my stamp on it and really take it to the next level. Where did that entrepreneurial spirit come from, and how has it played out since then?
That's interesting that you grabbed that, because that is exactly what has happened, and is essentially sort of been the path I've had since then. So as I told you, my mom is, always been a big inspiration and done a lot. She was the first entrepreneur I knew of. She had her own business early on, running it from our house. I remember it was called Helping Hands. And it was basically a business trying to connect caregivers with people that needed that type of assistance. And she built a business. I remember, her putting it all together from scratch, and, logos and business cards, all that stuff. And that was early. And I can't say that I was like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur because of that. But I think I saw that as like, oh, wow, that was early seed planting in the back of my head, right? And so then when I got to school, I knew I wanted to get involved in school. I went in as a political science major thinking I was going to go into law. And I was inspired because I remember I told you I had some people around me, and an attorney was something of a possibility I saw for me. I didn't know really much more about it, but I just decided I'm going to go in as a political science major, and that's the path I'm going to go. And that first year of discovery for me at school was, trying to figure out where I was going to end up at, what path I was going to end up at, really trying to feel out what's out there. And I ended up connecting with the fraternity. And it really was because of the opportunity to build something from scratch. I mean, the fraternity was 1 year old at the time. The founders had just started. We had a chance to get in at the ground floor and really kind of put our stamp on things. I saw the dynamic that was at the university. I saw what was going on with, the different, the differences within our own culture that were struggles, and not everyone fit into one box. And I saw that. And so when I got involved with the fraternity, and we started just as early as pledging and what the pledging process did for us to essentially build and create our own business. Our pledge class was a business, and we operated it like that. And I had very sharp guys in our class that were like motivated, and we were just like striving to like take it to like another level. We're like, oh, and that was super inspirational for me. And I was like, let's go. And the good thing about it is it really created a lot of passion and fire from us for the organization and trying to build it and what we were doing. The challenge that we had, I think, looking back, especially now, is we essentially were taking a baby away from somebody and creating our own baby and building that, because the founders had gone through so much to get it to that point. And all of a sudden these 6 dudes come in, and now it's theirs, because most of these guys are older, they're graduating, there's not as connected, right? And so now we're taking it on, and there wasn't as much of a cohesion as I think there could have been at that time. Because, we're a pledge class, they're the big brothers, we had to do our own thing, and we were like on fire. I mean, they're like, okay, you got to do a barbecue. We had the biggest barbecue. You got to do this. We'd have the biggest that. You got to do a party. We had a crazy party, and they were like, what the hell is going on? What are these guys doing? Like, they're kind of taking this away from us, and they're like, so, and then we just kept going, and so the fraternity just kept growing and just took off from there, and obviously the founders, without them, we would have never been where we are today. And they were involved. And I think that there was a lot of even internal, like, fraternal struggles that we were having because of the identity that Santa Barbara had amongst NAC as a whole. Santa Barbara founders were from day one always trying to, I don't want to say buck the system, but they were like challenging what the system was in place. Oh, you want us to carry a binder that's this small? Why the heck would we carry a binder when we have paper and we have to use regular notebooks? Why can't we use our own regular notebook size? Because that makes more sense. Why well, I'm going to have to fold my stuff and put it in there? I'm going to keep my own. So then they had to challenge the system to like, oh, we're not carrying those little baby binders. So, Santa Barbara, for the first 3-4 years, if you ever look back, the binders are legitimate folder size binders, right? So our binders were always different from our Pledge Brothers binders, and so now we're like, oh, you guys are better than us, and so they had all internal stuff. I don't know if you know the history back then too, but our founders didn't agree with the pledging process and the fact that the guys had to do push-ups. Why the guy got to do push-ups? You guess what? We're not doing push-ups, and the class is coming in. They're not going to do push-ups. We're going to teach them a different way of how to do it, because there's a different way of having to teach someone with having that physically demand that from them in those ways. And those were the early sort of, inspirations that they had, I think, of trying to make things better than they were and not necessarily conform to what was there. And we've always been that way. So we kind of always went that path. But again, kind of going back to what you were saying, so once I got a feel of running the being a part of the pledge class and really building that and running a really strong business operation, I said, F poli-sci or law, I want to go into business for myself. And my whole mentality from then on was, I'm going into business for myself. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be something. So I changed paths from, did think I was going to go law. I finished as a poli-sci major, but I was completely on the path of becoming an entrepreneur, which ended up what happened when I graduated. And I have never not worked for anyone else but myself since then.
So what is it that you've been doing for the past, I guess, 25 years?
So I started, when I went to Santa Barbara, I had at least 3 or 4 jobs at a time, and while going to school. So I was always working someplace and doing something. And I ended up working with the office, like the recruitment office. Mm-hmm. And I was really involved with the recruitment office. And then I got connected with them, and I worked there probably 3 or 4 years doing like tours and visitation programs and different kinds of stuff. And it was all based out of being in recruitment. So that was one of my, initially coming out of school, that was sort of the I don't know what type of business I want to be in, but if there's a world out there in recruitment, I can leverage my experience from college in recruiting to maybe something in recruiting. So I looked at like university jobs in recruitment coming out of school. And then I looked at recruiting jobs that were more like on the career placement, staffing type stuff. And so when I came out of school, there was a opportunity to join a recruiting firm that specialized in placing like sales professionals. It was executive recruitment. It was 100% commission. It was a sink or swim opportunity. You had to go. I was on I think $1,000 or $1,500 draw, and the draw meant that if you didn't make your minimum that month, you went negative. So you were down another 1,000, and so it was really like, it was a really sink or swim type opportunity. And I was like, you know what? I told myself I wanted to get into business for myself. I believe in myself. I'm going to do it. And so I went the recruiting path at this company, and jumped in with 2 feet. I said, I'm going to give myself 2 years, sink or swim, see what happens. And then we'll reassess at 2 years to see where I'm at. And if I like it, I'm doing good, I'll keep going. If I don't, I need to do something else, and we'll figure it out at that time. And, I did that and did really well, got off my feet pretty good, got some good mentors in the business. And then about 4 years into, about my 4th year into it, on the side, while I was doing this, a buddy of mine was connected with a real estate guy locally in the area that we were at. And so we started trying to learn a little bit about investing in real estate, buying houses, fixing them, flipping them, that type of thing. And he would do like a Saturday sort of 3-hour course. You can go talk to them, and he would teach you a few things. And if you go take the course, so we built a relationship with them. So in about my 4th year of working at this recruiting company, he'd always tell us, oh, you got to get into real estate. Don't do the recruiting and all this stuff. And my 3 guys, two buddies of mine that I was connected with, we decided, it's time for us to graduate and start our own recruiting firm, because we have the contacts, we have the relationships, we understand the model. Let's go do our own thing. So we decided to leave. And when we left, this real estate guy found out about it, and he's like, oh man, you know what? As a matter of fact, I just let go of my whole office, and I got extra space in my office. If you guys want to just, lease out a little space and build your recruiting business here, you guys can do it. We're like, heck yeah. It was in Hermosa Beach. It was overlooking the water. We're like, perfect. So we go and start in his office, and we started doing the recruiting thing. I think we did about a year or 2 there. We struggled. We had to hustle. It was a little tough. But we did okay. But it was definitely a struggle. But at the time, we were still learning a little bit of real estate on the side. And then he came into like essentially teaching us a system in targeting, properties, distressed properties, and trying to fix and flip these types of properties. And he had this whole system that he wanted to do. And he's like, listen, I understand this. I've learned this model. I want to teach you guys to do it, but I want you guys to run it like a business. And if I do this and I teach you this, you guys got to shut down recruiting and you got to do real estate 100%. And we knew we were eventually going to go into real estate anyways. So we're like, you know what, that's it. And from one day to the next, we just shut down the recruiting business, started a real estate business, built that all up, and then been doing that since 2003. That's all I've been doing. So I do just investing in real estate in different ways. I learned from, going after properties and fixing and flipping those types of properties to eventually like buying different things. I still fix and flip properties, and, just kind of graduating into the real estate investing opportunities that are out there. And I've run the same company and done the same thing ever since.
So is the company 100% yours, or you've got a couple partners? How does that work?
Yeah, so the partners that I had, I was with them for about 5 or 6 years after we started it, and then again, it was just graduation time, and we were like, okay, there's no reason for us to be in a partnership anymore when we know we can run our own sort of operation ourselves. And so we all kind of graduated into doing our own thing. So I separated. Each of us separated on good terms and just ran our own operation and did the exact same thing independent of them. And so now I've been doing it on my own for that since 2010 now.
I was going to say 5 or 6 years, that would put us right in the middle of 07, 08, right? And so what better time to everybody go their own way?
To 07, 08, man, that was, those are some struggles. It was tough, man. It was really tough. It was a learning process. Essentially, the whole real estate banking world shut down. The foreclosure market was just insane, and we specialized in targeting those types of properties. The challenge was, or the biggest issue was, because of the volume of properties that were in default, the banks didn't have the capacity to handle how many properties were in default and what they were going to do with them. So they essentially had to build this whole within their own system and within their own organization, had to build how they were going to handle all these properties that were in default and what they were going to do to mitigate, some of that. It took them at least a year plus to get through that. So that was a really challenge, because it was really difficult to do business at that time.
Since 2010, man, it's been good times, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the real estate market has been. Yeah, it has been a run. So real estate is definitely, there's a lot of opportunities, and I'm blessed to have been able to go through those struggles, to learn, what it takes to fight through that, to reap the benefits of what's been going on, and to be able to kind of, grow from all of that. But it's I don't think it'll ever get as bad as that. That's just my opinion. I don't know if it's going to get that bad. I'm sure we're going to have some types of corrections. But that was tough. That was a tough period of time.
Well, I think about the folks who went through 07, 08, 09, and I compare them to the folks who got in real estate maybe in 14 or 15, right? And and the difference and how the survivors are prepared for whatever it is that we're going through or about to go through, versus the folks who have only seen the good times.
Yep. Yeah. It definitely is a difference. There is definitely a difference. If you're able to go through the struggles and be able to benefit on the other side and make it out of that, you're a different type of professional. It's just people don't even understand. Like people coming into the anytime after that, it's all been good times. So it's hard to understand like, oh, how difficult really was that, or how bad was that, or what were people going through. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy. There was so we would target a lot of properties that were in default, that people weren't they weren't making payments on their mortgage, right? So there was people literally before the crash, because there was they were essentially all these liar loans, right? And you had a pulse and you could get a loan, right? So anybody could get a loan. It didn't even matter, and it was all kinds of stuff going on. And then there was literally people who were buying properties. The appreciation was going so fast. They never made a payment on the mortgage. They would let the property go into default. 6 months later, sell it and make a profit, and never had one dime come out of their pocket. That's how like crazy of a peak it was coming to. And then once it just stopped and crashed, there was so many upside down properties that was just like it was tough to deal with.
I was in Florida during that time, and so
oh man,
I saw it's pretty comedic, because I was in Silicon Valley in 01, 02 for the .com bust. Okay. And then I ended up and so I saw that bust, and then I was in Florida for the housing market bubble and bust. And so, yeah, anytime somebody says, "Oh no, it's not a bubble," I'm like, man, I've lived through two of them.
Yeah.
I believe differently. Hey man, I know we're running on time. I got a couple more questions. These are questions that I ask everybody, and the first one I want to ask is growing up the way you grew up, in a single parent home, with less affluence obviously than you have now. You learned work ethic from your mom at a very, very young age, and you didn't grow up spoiled. And now you and your wife are parents of means. How do you raise kids and instill that same work ethic while at the same time spoiling the shit out of them because you can and you want to and you have the means to?
And that is the. I wish I could say that I was doing that. I don't necessarily think I am. I mean, I believe. Here's a simple way of the way I live is work hard, play hard. That's a simple way, right? And I think my inspiration for my kids, and I think they see it in both my wife and I, is we work hard. We work hard. You may not see it all the time. You may not see me because I've learned to work smarter, right? I'm not necessarily having to go out every day, and I've created an opportunity for myself where I got a lot of resources and people working for me, right, that are allowing me to maximize my time so I can spend time with my kids. Mm-hmm. And that's been my biggest thing for me in anything that I've done is my whole reason for being an entrepreneur and wanting to be going down that world has been about controlling my time. And I wanted to make sure that I can control my time so that when I started in school, and I knew that I wanted to get into the business for myself. I didn't know what time was, because I knew at some point I wanted to have as much time with my kids that I could. I didn't know what that meant because I didn't have kids at the time. but now I understand. Obviously, I can do this. I can do all kinds of stuff with my kids and be there for them 100% of the time. But what I think they realize is we work hard. We work hard. We have and by working hard, you reap the benefits of the things that they're benefiting from. And we didn't have the stuff that they have now, and I'm hoping that they see, like, even me being able to be there for my kids and take them to their practices and take them to their things and be there 100% of the time and not miss a game and not any of that, right? That will be a motivation for them and their kids, and being able to be there as much as they can and work their butts off to be able to have those opportunities for them. So I'm hoping that, our we're examples in our everyday lives of showing them that you have to work hard if you want to have, the stuff that we get to, to benefit from.
All right. Next question is a fun one. 5 favorite artists. It could be musicians, authors, actors.
All right. So as far as music, if I think early on, and like, I've always been, I'm going to say first is going to be, because for some reason it's always been early. Like I remember going road trips and just this inspiration. The Eagles have always been a big inspiration for me. Just like you can't ever go wrong with the Eagles. It's so weird, but like my son's taste of music is almost identical to mine, and it's like these are big deals for us. So Eagles, I would say another one which was from very early on is Bob Marley.
Nice.
And so from a music standpoint, those two. Early like influential in my life, because at that time, hip hop was starting to get started. So Run DMC,
nice.
That was early days for me. LL Cool J was early days for me. My first album that I bought was UTFO. So like hip hop and that early stage of music. So I think that's 5.
Yeah.
Music.
That's 5. 5 dinner guests, dead or alive.
Oh my gosh, 5 dinner guests, dead or alive. 5 dinner guests, dead or alive. I mean, wow. So I would say I would love to sit down with Jesus. That would always be a big one. I mean, that's been a big part of my upbringing, and just kind of the connection that was there. It'd be interesting to have a conversation about now, like perspective on different things from when I was younger to I am now. So I think that would always be a good conversation. I would love to sit down with Bob Marley. That would be another. That would be a great conversation. You know who else? Who else would be a good dinner guest? I'm gonna say I've always thought he was an interesting person, and I think it would be a great conversation. Prince.
Nice.
Yeah, Prince would be someone I would like to talk to. Who else would be let's get back to that. I'm gonna think about
No problem. One of the second to last question. What's some of the best advice you've ever been given?
Best advice. Professionally, I think one thing that I've kind of always I learned when I started this recruiting company, and we had this guy, and he was all about, just he was no nonsense type of dude. But what he said one time stuck with me and is still to this day: don't confuse effort with results. Right? At the end of the day, it's all about results to me. So, I mean, obviously there's a lot in the struggle and the effort and the work, but in our world, in the entrepreneurial world, in business, in at the end of the day, it's all about results. So that's something that's it's always kind of stuck with me. Simple, but straight to the point.
There's so many people out there being busy.
Yeah. They get lost in the activity and the fluff around it, and don't realize that. I mean, it's the same thing from my kids. It's like, oh, just because you're doing it doesn't mean you're getting it done. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's the same thing, right? So
I love that. Just because you're doing it doesn't mean you're getting it done. That's good. That's good. And then we'll do two more. What was one of your best memories from undergrad NAC? And you don't have to, don't incriminate anybody. Just
one of my best memories. I mean, I have a lot of good. So I would definitely say some of my best memories were spending time in San Jose. And I remember I did a road trip up and met up with John Marcoida, and he and I are like two peas in a pod. And I remember meeting up with him, and I probably spent about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, just hanging with him and his whole world. And it was like his friends from high school and his friends from college, and then we were just bouncing around like just having a good time, barbecuing and hanging. And the reason why it was so meaningful to me was I had never really been outside like that on my own in a different city or place like that, and to leave and be there and just meet new people and connect with all kinds of just people from a whole, like Northern California was like a whole different world to me, right? Like I never even knew anything about it until the fraternity, really. And so to be living and seeing and going to the city and just all the different stuff that was along with it, to me was just, I remember that so much. Coupled with, I mean, if you're talking about NAC events, and of course early Coco Locos were just next level crazy. And just what I remember is in Santa Barbara, the fraternity was our world there. A few, maybe a dozen, 2 dozen guys at a time, max. And that was NAC to us. Then to go to like a place like San Jose, where it was like the epicenter of NAC, like one of them, right? And you go in there and it's like everything is like you just see the influence that they were, and the depth that they had, and the amount of bros, and the activities, and the parties, and the brotherhood, and the house, and the barbecues, and just the connection. I was just like, man, this is what it's about. This is what the fraternity is about. You come up here and you're just hanging with dudes, and you're just shooting the shit, and you're just all day long just hanging out and just doing whatever the hell you want to do, and it was really like a real true, like that's the essence to me of brotherhood at the time, and seeing it in its like in its highest stages, even going to other places like Fresno and same thing. It's like a whole different world, but it wasn't San Jose, it was Fresno, and it was like a whole different culture, but it was brotherhood and NAC, so like being able to do those trips and spend that time and those all the places that we'd go to road trip. San Diego, another place, man. We'd go there and it was same thing. They just had their whole this whole world of knack that was just like just blossoming, and it was really, really, really special to me.
Love it. Absolutely love it. All right, bro. Last question. Who should I have on the podcast? And here the catch is that you got to help me get them on.
Oh, well, I mean, okay. So if I'm gonna give you, so how we got connected and I remember it was by way of John and maybe Alan
And Jason. It was
and did you have Jason on?
Yeah,
did you have Jason on?
It was Jason Navarro.
Okay.
The one that
I don't remember seeing that one. Okay, so Navarro too. Okay, so between those three, if I'm gonna give you some knacks that I think you should talk to, I'm gonna tell you, I would say right off the cuff, for sure you got to talk to Danny. And Danny is Danny Oliveira.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. From San Diego. Sure. I don't know if he's been on.
No, he has not, for sure.
He he's in that same world, same time frame as us. We all kind of start in the same time frame. Very influential. We didn't really touch on the people you're talking to, the Jasons, the John. We all kind of went through different time frames in the evolution of knack, and I think that would be kind of another interesting conversation for all of us to have, is specific to the history of knack and kind of like the different phases that we went through, and where we are today. And so Danny was definitely part of that. Did you talk to Candy?
No, not yet.
Oh yeah, see, Candy's another one. He's another one. One of the biggest experiences and sort of groundbreaking experiences and I think opportunities for knack was when we went to New York, and we went to go build what is now become like the national presence of Latino fraternities and sororities. And when that, the East met the West sort of thing. And we had this contingency of bros that essentially were the ones that went out to meet the East Coast bros or East Coast fraternities and sororities. And we were representing NAC. And this was the sort of group of people that went through that. And so, Danny is someone, Candy's someone, I'm trying to think of guys that were connected with me. Another one that I would say you would want to talk to is shoot, I'm going to tell you, I can throw you a hand. So I'm going to tell you one. I think you should talk to Abel.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Abel Gutierrez.
Yep.
He's a founder from UCSD. And he was a part of a time frame, when those chapters came in, additional UCs, there was a lot of stuff that was going on. And he was very much about sort of a different vision and growth of NAC and kind of where we were in transition. And he had a very influential presence in the organization, and he still is, and he's a guy that's gone through a lot, and he's another person I would say you'd want to talk to.
Hell yeah, bro. Hell yeah. Hey man, I just want to thank you for your time. I know you're super busy and you've got lots of responsibilities, but it's so inspirational. I don't even know if you remember, we met way back when. I mean, I graduated in 99, so you were still around and in the mix and in leadership positions on the national level. And so I want to thank you for all that you did. NAC absolutely positively changed my life. And through this podcast, I've had the opportunity to talk to the founders of Santa Clara, Sean and John and the likes, and get to tell them and give them their flowers. And so I just want to give you your flowers, bro, because what you did, whether you understood it at the time or not, especially with the organization being so young, has influenced and changed and empowered so many. And I think we're still in the infancy, because I think we're now getting to the stage where we have resources like yourself and the other founders who, when you were going through, you didn't have old guys to reach out to and be like, hey, give me an internship, or give me
yeah.
And so my hope is that this, in whatever small way, starts to empower those connections, starts to tell those stories, and starts to lay the groundwork for us to have that infrastructure that all these other organizations take advantage of all the time. So I mean, I appreciate it, brother.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that, and I think what you're doing here is awesome. I think it's really an opportunity for many of us to reconnect, but also to learn a little bit more in depth about who we are as people, and some of our backgrounds, because we never really had an opportunity to kind of be able to share them and have the information the way you're doing it, and be able to save this type of stuff. But at the same time, I think it's really important for us to share our experiences and our history, and to record this type of stuff so that we have it forever. And like you said, it'll continue to be a resource for generations to come. And it's only going to make, the organization and our connections that much deeper.
Absolutely, brother. I love it. Hey, man, the next time you're in Utah for your son's tournament,
another tournament,
I'm not going to miss it this time. I'm not going to miss it.
I'll hit you up again.
For sure, brother. I hope this is just the beginning of us. I know we're not going to hang out every weekend, but hopefully we can stay in touch. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, man, count me in.
Appreciate it.
Same all right, here. Brother. All right. We'll talk soon. Thanks, care. Man. Peace.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Until next time, bros. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.